Hi, the video I'm going to share with you today is about how to make a persimmon pudding. But before we need to go into that, we need to talk about why should farmers know what persimmons are and why should they know how to make a persimmon pudding. So there's two types of persimmons grown in North Carolina. One is the American persimmon, and it grows wild where it can be cultivated. And then the other persimmon is the Asian persimmon, and it comes in several different varieties. These persimmons are much larger, about the size of an apple, and they come in astringent and non-astringent varieties. So astringent means that the fruit can not be eaten directly off the tree. It needs to cure. So what you would do is you would actually have to pick the fruit and let it set for a few weeks. Or in the case of the American persimmon, they fall off the tree, and then when they fall off the tree, you know they're ripe. It's actually a joke among people that actually know about the fruit that it's the only fruit that you eat rotten. The other varieties are non-astringent, and what this means is that they can be eaten directly off the tree. And these are the types that we see mainly in the farmers markets and stores. However, there's a large market that is underutilized for the American persimmon pulp. So what I want to talk to you today is a little bit about the American persimmon and how to use it in cooking. So the American persimmon, the wood can be used as well as the fruit. The wood can be used in deer plots throughout the winter. Deers will eat the wood during the winter while there's no other food sources available. And also the wood can be used for medicine properties, or it can be used for furniture. It makes really great furniture. But the fruit is also a very nutrient-rich fruit that the pulp can be stored from, frozen, and then made into different cakes, cookies, puddings. So what I want to share with farmers in North Carolina is that these are a very underutilized tree that have a lot of different purposes. They don't take up that much room. You can get a lot of fruit off of one tree, and then they're a great side crop, and they grow in a lot of soils that most other crops don't grow in. So if you have patches on your farm that are underutilized because of poor soil, this is a great tree to put there. So the first thing that we need to know about the trees before we know how to propagate them or how to grow them or fertilize them is what can we tell our customers what they can do with the fruit. They have to have a reason for buying the fruit before we can sell it. So that's why today I'd like to show you how to make a persimmon pudding, because it's a very delicious dessert that a lot of people like that you could sell the pulp in order to make. Alright, hey guys, I'm Jordan Shipton. I'm majoring in agricultural education, and I'm a senior this year, and I'm from Lexington, which is in Davidson County. And the great thing about Lexington is we have an abundance of persimmon trees, and not the Asian persimmon trees, but the actual American persimmons like I talked about in the previous lecture earlier this year. And in that lecture I handed out a recipe for persimmon pudding, and today I would like to actually show you how to make that recipe, and hopefully you can make it at home and try it out, because if you don't, then you're just missing out. It's like the best thing ever. So to start with, we're going to start with 2 cups of flour, and we're just mixing all of our dry ingredients. And then we're going to do 1.5 cups of sugar, and if you want to make this healthier, you can use Splenda. And then our spices and our leveling agents, we have 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and then 1 teaspoon of salt. And I've just already mixed all this in this bowl, so I'm just going to dump it in there. And normally you should sift this, but I'm a poor college student and I don't have a sifter here. So I'm just going to fluff it up with a fork and mix it, and that'll achieve about the same thing. So, and the great thing about this recipe is that you can't mess it up. I've ran out of butter before and I put olive oil in it. I did 1/2 whole wheat flour and 1/2 white flour to make it healthier. And so really, when I tell you that it won a blue ribbon in the Davidson County Fair, I guess 2 years technically, but you know, it's easy. It's nothing to really brag about. But there was a funny story behind that one. I won a blue ribbon the first year I entered it. And then my now roommate, Abby, we were in rival high schools, but I met her when I went to her high school to take horticulture. So she also makes this recipe, but makes it a different way. So we jumped each other for about a month. And then we went to the fair and we both entered our persimmon puddings. And whenever they opened the exhibit hall that first day, we both go running up there to see who won. And there's a blue ribbon on both of them. So we were slightly mad. But anyway, interesting story for you. So now I've got all this mixed up. And now I'm going to put my wet ingredients in here. So the wet ingredients are 3 eggs. Just whatever size egg you have. It doesn't matter for this really. And then you have 2 cups of milk, whatever milk you want. You can use skim, you can use 1%, 2%, whole, whatever works for you. Again, I'm a poor college kid, so my lovely measuring cups are pretty. And then we have 2 cups of persimmon pulp. And persimmon pulp, it's actually really interesting because even though they grow everywhere, the trees do, this stuff's actually pretty expensive if you buy it on the market. It's actually about $10 for 2 cups of it. And I think that's a astoundingly high price, but either way, we have it. It was free. It just took a little manual labor from me. We actually have one of these trees growing in my backyard, so that always helps out a little bit. So now that we have the wet ingredients, I'm just going to mash my eggs up a little bit and get this kind of mixed up. And this recipe actually, it came from a really close family friend. It was a little lady that we called her the town gossip. She taught more than anybody you'll ever know, I promise. But she was really sweet, and she gave me this recipe a few years before she passed away, and I begged her for it for years. And finally she's like, Jordan, you know it's in the church cookbook. You don't have to beg me for it. So, oops. But anyway, I've got the recipe and now it can be passed down. I hope I do it justice. Alright, so now that's mixed up. And next what we're going to do is we're just going to mix our wet and dry ingredients. So what we're going to do first is put a little bit of the dry ingredients in with the wet, just so that whenever I go to turn on the mixer, hopefully it doesn't all fly up at me. So I'm going to take my mixer, and on low I'm just going to kind of gradually mix this in. Try not to get covered by it. And then after we get it started mixing, we're just going to keep adding the dry ingredients to the wet gradually. Now I just about covered our kitchen. It is a really, really wet batter, so and I'm just going to scrape down the sides of the bowl a little bit, get the rest of that flour. Mix it one more time. Alright, so now I'm just going to get a baking dish, and the other great thing about this recipe is that you can use about whatever size baking dish you have on hand. This is a little bit larger one, and that'll hold this whole bowl. I've done it before. This will make it about that thick whenever it comes out of the oven. But like my grandpa and my dad, they like theirs about this thick. So I could take this bowl and actually make 2 puddings if I wanted to. But we're just going to pour it in there. Like that. And then I've got 2 tablespoons of melted butter that I'm just going to kind of drizzle in here a little bit. Make it even. And then gently stir it in with the fork. I didn't want it as incorporated as the mixer can get it, but I still want it in there. And like I said, you can use olive oil, you can use probably coconut oil. This is a very forgiving recipe, and I used olive oil before and people actually liked it better than the butter. They said it added to the fruit flavor. Alright, so now I have the oven preheated. It's preheated to 300 degrees. And I'm just going to put this pudding in there and it'll bake for about an hour. We'll pull it out. So. Okay, so the persimmon pudding is almost ready to come out of the oven. So before I pull it out, I wanted to talk a little bit about where you can find the persimmon pulp. You can find the pulp or the trees if you go walking back through the woods. There's some trees growing around Lake Johnson. There's some growing around Lake Raleigh. So what you do is you take the fruit and you strain it and mash it through a strainer, and what this does is it gets the seeds out, but you get to keep the pulp, and that's what you use in all of the persimmon recipes. And one neat fact is if you cut the persimmon seed open, then whatever shape the embryo is in will tell you what the winter is going to be like. It'll be a spoon, a fork, or a knife. So that's just a quick fun fact, but now we're going to pull out the pudding. There it is, and it'll go down a little bit as it cools. But the great thing about these is that you don't have to go out and buy persimmons with all of the wild trees around here. And that's a good thing because, like I said, they're about $10 for 2 cups. And just to establish 1 acre of wild persimmons, in the rare chance that somebody does grow them, it can cost about $8,000 for 3 years. So economically, it's a lot better for you to just go walking through the woods to find these. But I really encourage you to go look and try it because this is a great recipe. It's a great holiday dish. It's definitely got that holiday feel about it with the cinnamon and the nutmeg. So go out, find your persimmon tree, try out the recipe, and I'm going to enjoy my persimmon pudding.